Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to NPTEL's course on communication skills. We are now on the most interesting module of communication skills, that's nonverbal communication. This is module number 3, lecture number 4, nonverbal communication. Now in the past 3 lectures, I've been trying to introduce to you about nonverbal communication, its significance, particularly the importance of body language, and then I also talked about functions of nonverbal communication, types of nonverbal communication. Now in this concluding part of this module, this final lecture, what I am going to do is to tell more about nonverbal communication, particularly the aspects that we have not covered so far, such as face, proxemics, chronemics, and after I finish it, then I will try to give some tips about how you can use this aspect of nonverbal communication to enhance your professional image, and at the end of it, how you can become an expert nonverbal communication analyst. Okay. Now, to continue with what I left in the previous one, I just talked about face being a very powerful nonverbal medium of communication, channel of communication. Now, universally there are 6 basic facial expressions that have been accepted everywhere. Now, let us look at those expressions very quickly, and this was in fact categorized by Paul Ekman in Emotions Revealed. So, he talks about the language of facial expression, and he says that there are 6 basic facial expressions. The first 2 universal facial expressions are joy and sorrow. So, throughout the world, the face will clearly reflect when it is happy, when it is joyful. So, when there is absence of sorrow, again the face you find that it is quite cheerful. And the opposite emotion, that is sorrow, sadness, somebody is in a tragic situation, somebody is undergoing a traumatic experience. So, you find sorrow on the face of the individual. So, joy and sorrow, first 2 universal facial expressions, followed by fear. It is very difficult to control your face when you are afraid of something, even when we are intimidated by somebody's presence, then also the fear is reflected on our face. So, fear is the next universal facial expression, followed by anger. How many people who lose their defense when they suddenly get angry, and immediately the kind of polished, sophisticated personality that they were projecting suddenly disappears when they are angry, and anger reflected on their face becoming red, it is very difficult to control, and this is another universal emotion that is expressed by face. And the next 2 are surprise. So, this is again something that we cannot control and we express universally, followed by disgust. So, you can say utter loathsomeness you feel for something or some situation, dislike, hatred, repulsiveness, all combined you express your disgust. Now, if you look at the 6 facial expressions, this is one picture available on the internet which shows anger, fear, disgust, happy, sad and surprise at the same time, and this is supposed to be universal. And when we come to eyes, are there some universal things? Are they telling the same story? Now, if you even look at some of the icons, pictures, images that I have gathered from the net, you will find that each eye is expressing something differently. When the eyes are closed, for instance, like this, you can understand the person may be quite bored. When the eyes are quite open but the eyebrows are bit closer, you can understand that maybe the person is angry, the person is frowning and so on. Now, let us look at how oculesics, that is related to gaze and eye contact play a very crucial role in nonverbal communication. Oculesics is the science of actually studying eye contact, gaze, use of eyes, particularly in nonverbal communication. Now, gaze is the term used to mean looking at a person. Okay, just when you look and place the look for some time, you are actually gazing at the person. Eye contact means mutual gaze. Usually, unlike a casual look, this gaze happens especially in a professional situation where you look at the person and deliver your communication message, as in a presentation situation where you are presenting a proposal to your client and so on. So, eye contact means here mutual gaze. You look at the person and the other person also looks at you, where the two look at each other at the same time. Now, maintaining eye contact signals genuineness. This I said at the beginning also. If a person is avoiding eye contact, rather it is thought to be somewhat deceptive, dishonest, and the person is trying to escape addressing some issues directly. And avoiding it actually signals shiftiness. Now, in the following lecture, in the next module, I am going to talk about intercultural communication. But it's interesting here to hint at some of the intercultural variations here itself. In terms of oculesics, look at the cultural variation. Americans, for instance, are made to look directly or taught to look directly, and from a childhood stage itself, the Americans imbibe this in their behavior. Whereas, if you look at Japanese, Koreans, and the most part of South Asians, including even Indians, they are not taught to look at directly someone. It's not there in the culture. And then even where Americans would consider looking directly as a sign of openness, honesty, here in case of Japanese and Koreans, they are not taught to look at directly, and rather they are being controlled in terms of their behavior to avoid direct eye contact. Now, for them it is considered a weakness if you give that, and it may indicate in most of the context sexual overtones if a person is trying to gaze at the other person directly. Now, in India, for instance, direct eye contact could be avoided in a situation where the person wants to show respect and the person feels that it's rather rude to look at the elder person directly into the eyes and gently avoids that direct eye contact. So, this difference apart, you can understand that in a professional context, generally trying to maintain eye contact always means genuineness, and trying to avoid could mean that you are trying to not give away something or trying to avoid something. So, be careful about this. Now, when we talk about cultural difference, we should also understand that shy and timid people most of the times cannot hold eye contact for more than just a few seconds without glancing away. Now, apart from the cultural difference, we should also look at the personality. There are people who are strong and then who are extroverts and who can look directly into the eyes of others. There are people who are introverts, or there are by profession people who are quite shy and bit isolated, and these people cannot hold eye contact without shifting their glance. Now, this does not imply that that particular person is lying, but it may be that the person is actually intimidated by the presence of the other person with whom this one is communicating. So, sometimes when they are confronting with a person who is rather powerful in status, or even it may be just a stranger, and for the first time this person happens to meet that stranger, shy people, timid people avoid this, or at least they try to shift occasionally. Now, this does not mean they are deceptive, but it's in their personality trait that whenever they get intimidated, they avoid it. Another interesting aspect about eye contact is the voluntary and involuntary dimension of eye contact. Overall, if you remember, I said that nonverbal communication itself is most interesting for us because of this voluntary and involuntary dimension. And in case of eye contact, let us look at what do we mean by voluntary and involuntary dimensions. In voluntary dimension, when you intend that you should maintain eye contact with somebody, when you actually look at the other person with some intent, with some meaning, with some communicative purpose, with some communicative function, it can indicate friendliness, it can indicate respect, it can indicate interest, it can also show comfort when you just open your eyes and look at the other person. And in a situation where you are the boss and the other one is subordinate, or you are in a very dominating position in a relationship, it can indicate domination. Now, this is voluntary dimension. Now, even in voluntary dimension, the duration, that is how much time a person takes to maintain this eye contact, this gaze, the frequency, apart from the time, let us say 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and frequency, within 2 minutes how many times? Only once, twice. In 10 minutes 20 times. Okay, the duration, frequency, and not meeting or meeting, it means something. So you can see how sometimes relationship develops just by eye contact. So we see so many movies, particularly the romantic ones, mostly the hero and the heroine happen to meet on the bus stop. So the hero or the heroine maintains eye contact and the duration becomes longer. Initially it's a very passing glance, and then the duration becomes longer, and then the frequency also increases. They keep looking at each other, they keep continuously looking at each other. They avoid it occasionally for certain social expected behavior, but then again they continue, the frequency increases, and then suppose they develop the relationship, and then let us say there is some misunderstanding and one person is angry with the other person will not meet the eye of the person. So you can understand that eye contact can develop a relationship, nurture a relationship, but it can also indicate when there is miscommunication, when the person doesn't want to meet the other person's eye. Always it implies that there is a gap, there is an intention involved. But all these are coming under voluntary dimensions. Now let's look at some more about voluntary dimensions before we go to the involuntary one. Generally, even in voluntary dimensions, apart from maintaining eye contact, we avoid eye contact with strangers. Normally, it's our nature to avoid eye contact with strangers unless and until we are introduced, or unless we feel that we are familiar with those strangers. Then, in physically close situations, as in lift, even when we are just closed together, then also what we do is we just tend to avoid looking at the person, even if the person is just standing. For instance, another closed situation is electric train, buses, where we are traveling with others together and the other person is just looking at us in front of us. Now, even then we tend to avoid that eye contact because the other person is a stranger. With known person, if we avoid this eye contact, it implies lack of interest. Somebody whom we like so much, but suddenly we stop maintaining eye contact, it means that we do not like something that the other person did, or we are losing interest in the other person. Now, look at children. Children are very sensitive towards eye contact. For instance, if the mother has kept the baby on her lap, and then let us say she is watching television or she is talking to somebody, you will find that the baby, once the baby realizes that the mother is changing the eye contact to the TV or to a stranger, the baby will even go to the extent of even pulling the chin of the mother and making the mother face the baby. It will try to change the eye contact of the mother. Okay. So children are very sensitive, especially when they feel that they are missing the eye contact of their beloved mother, father, brother, sister, or any other kid. They would try to restore it by doing something non-verbally. It is also interesting to note how this newspaper news readers are reading it on TV. How many times you have observed that they, although they are reading something that is scrawled behind them, they try to create the deceptive impression that they are actually looking into your eyes and they are maintaining eye contact. It would be rather very uninteresting to listen without eyes meeting in case of news readers. And there are many people who get a feeling, elated feeling that, oh, that my favorite news reader, she is looking at me. So that's the kind of impression that's generated. Because of this, so there is a kind of involvement, although news reading is a kind of objective, highly professional kind of environment. Good speakers, if you look at good speakers, what they do is they manage to give the feel of looking at all the audience. They may actually look at somebody in the front, somebody at the back, and somebody on the left right corner. They may follow a rectangle kind of pattern, they may follow a triangle kind of pattern, looking at two this side, one there and one in the middle, or they may even follow a circular kind of pattern, eye movement. Whatever they do, they create the impression that everybody among the audience is being individually looked at. That's the mark of a good speaker, good communicator also. So keep that in mind whenever you are going to give a talk voluntarily. You should maintain eye contact and create the feeling that the audience should get a feeling that you are with them as far as maintaining eye contact. Now coming to the risky part of eye contact, that is the involuntary dimensions. Now why I say that it's risky? It's risky because in case of involuntary dimensions, the eye has two aspects. One is dilation and the other one is contraction, especially with regard to pupils. Now dilation is, you can say, the bulging of the eyeballs in a literal sense, where there's a feeling that the eyes are becoming larger in size and protruding, and contraction of pupils, the eyes reduce in size and even sometimes the eyelids try to cover it. Now when does the pupil dilates? When we look at objects of interest. It can be anything, it can be a simple object that is desirable, it can be a food item, it can be an object that we want to purchase, or it can be, for a man, it can be a very attractive girl. When the person looks at the other one, immediately there is dilation. Now as I said, in the involuntary dimension, on the one hand there is dilation and the other hand there is contraction. Now when there is contraction, it indicates boredom. When it is dilation, it's indicating interest. Now smart people, very good sellers, or rather manipulative sellers, who have actually understood the psychology of their customers, and mostly by measuring their choice, their likeness and disinterest, just by looking at the dilation and contraction of the pupils, just by looking at their eyes. Now what do? They will use it to attract and retain the clients. They may also use it to sell something at a very high price, or push something which the other person is showing lot of interest in buying. For instance, let's say a lady went for buying some sarees. So while displaying the sarees itself, if assuming that this seller is quite manipulative and quite good in non-verbal behavior, especially noting this eye dilation, So he will be looking for the eye dilation, and when he sees that, when he is displaying a saree, he sees that now the eye is dilating more. He understands that the lady is interested in this. Now what will he do? He will say that this is one of a kind and he cannot reduce price for this. This is 3000, it's a fixed one. Now another saree, equally good one, he sees the eye movement and he understands that there is no dilation, there is contraction. He understands that this lady is not interested in buying this. So what does he do? He says that no, this is 3000, no discount. No, this is also 3000, but if you want I can give you 30% discount. Because this, there are so many patents and so many things are easily available, but this is one of its kind. Now he knows, and then he understands that the person will buy this at any cost because the person is most interested on this kind of design and this side. Now this is how they use it, but in a professional context you can use this to measure the likes and dislikes of your clients. In an interview situation, you can also assess the panel's interest in your ideas. Sometimes even by looking at the eyes, you measure, you gauge that they are not interested in what you are talking about. Modify, change if required about what you are presenting. Now once we have talked about oculesics, let's know something more about another important aspect of non-verbal communication, that's haptics. Haptics is related to touch. Now simply speaking, it is use of physical contact when communicating, or once we go to space, proxemics, this is also referred to as zero proxemics, that is lack of space in communication, it's just touch, the contact point. Now if you look at touch, you will understand that it's one of the earliest means of non-verbal communication. It's one of the very first non-verbal symbols a newborn baby is lovingly exposed to, and it continues as a major means of communication. Now another interesting thing which we will slowly learn in the following module is that meanings about touch are imposed by culture. So although there could be some universals, there are many variations. Certain thing that is imposed in a culture as a good one is not the same one in some other culture. Okay, let's look at how it differs. For example, let's look at a male guest visiting the lady of the house. In Latin American culture, the touch could be quite proximate, intimate, and a hug is allowed. The person can hug. Now in European culture, normally it is shaking the hand or at least gently kissing the hand of the other person, especially if it is a woman. Now in case of Indian culture, it amounts to saying actually namaste. So when you say namaste, actually you are maintaining a distance. There is actually no contact point, especially in case of receiving the male guest by a female. Now in case of Arab, the Arab not even sees the female host. So that kind of distance is maintained, eye contact is avoided, touch is avoided. Now look at the scenario in another manner. In India, for instance, men walking hand in hand, okay, even putting hand on the shoulder of the other person, holding the hand of the other person, especially if the other person is a very close friend. So people understand that these two boys are good friends and they are very good indeed. Now in Europe, this could be misunderstood as a kind of homosexual gesture. Okay. So see the cultural meaning that is imposed to the same gesture in terms of touch. So one has to be careful, like if you are moving from India to Europe, and if you think that somebody is getting close to you and you put your hand, and especially in a social place, so you have to be just concerned about what the other person will think about it, what the society will think about it, and you have to modify your behavior accordingly. Now, again, look at another situation. In India, for instance, touching the feet of elders. Okay, when the elder comes, people just touch the feet and then take their blessings. Now, touching the feet is just normal in India, especially to show respect. Now, in America, in the US, if somebody goes and touches the feet, rather they consider that to be a very slavish kind of mentality, and it would embarrass an American. So, understand a situation where you are the subordinate, you have joined for a new job, and the boss happens to be an American and a very elderly person. You may have lot of respect for this person. So, you think that going and touching the feet of this American, you are expressing your respect for the person, and then you go and touch it. But rather the American would actually withdraw and actually would feel embarrassed. Some may even rudely respond to you back by thinking that why are you so slavishly trying to please this person. So, understand how nonverbal can cause miscommunication at the beginning itself. Avoid it once you are aware of this. So, that is the purpose of this whole module, teaching you how to avoid certain unpleasant nonverbal aspect of communication. Now, more about haptics, and especially when you come to human touch. As I said before, touching is the first form of communication even by infants. In fact, they, even before making sound, making meaningful noise, they learn everything just by touch. Now, researchers say the development as a healthy adult depends on the amount of touch received as an infant. Which means, if an infant received more touch from the mother, from the father, brother, sister, grandparents, neighborhood, everywhere, so more people gave coziness, the child, when it develops as an adult, is supposed to develop as a very healthy individual. It's the child that was abandoned or that was not cared for, that was not given enough touch when it was growing up, is the one that develops some kind of psychological repressions. And they say normally they do not develop as healthy as the other children. Touch is also used to comfort a crying baby. You know that when the child is crying, when the mother goes and takes the child or just gently pats, the cry subsides almost quickly. Now, you also understand that touch is also used to comfort an adult. Even when an adult is crying, so immediately somebody touches, pats, gives a hug, gives literally a shoulder for the other person to cry. Now, touch is so powerful, but it can also be intimidating when you touch somebody without letting the relationship develop that level of maturity, because there is something called territory, which we are going to discuss very soon in terms of proxemics. And when you touch, you are also violating their private space, and if you are not allowed in that space, then again it can be dangerous and lead to further miscommunication. But on the other hand, if you can use touch in relationships which have already developed, just like if you are the manager, patting one of your subordinates with whom you are quite friendly, especially as a token of appreciation, the other person will feel very elated and happy. So, that pat, the gentle pat, okay. Congratulations, shaking hands, so that again giving the touch, the warmth, so that can also make the other person feel good, comforted. So, touch, use it effectively. In terms of professional touch, let's focus on a minute about using handshake. Americans use a very firm, solid grip, whereas Middle Easterners and Orientals, they would prefer a gentle grip. It would be a firm grip if they experience a firm grip, for them it would rather suggest aggressiveness, or they may think that it's unnecessary to be so firm. So, they prefer a gentle one. What about the professional environment? Whether you are from America or from Middle East, what kind of touch you will use in handshake? It should be neither the dead fish nor the knuckle grinder. The dead fish is the kind where it's like one person is giving the hand, but then your hand, if you are giving the dead fish, you are just trying to slip out, as if the other person gets a feeling that it's a cold dead fish that he is touching and it's slipping from his hand. The other extreme is the knuckle grinder. You hold it, but it's as if you are holding so firm that you are grinding the knuckles of the other person and making the other person feel so uncomfortable. Both should be avoided in a professional environment, and it should be a very firm handshake. Neither the dead fish nor the knuckle grinder, but a firm handshake as far as touch is concerned in a professional situation with regard to handshake. Let's look at use of hand as part of touch in speech. Now, look at this funny cartoon, Hagar the Horrible. Now, this cartoon is quite interesting because it's just telling how even a human being will behave in a quite exaggerated manner. Look at what the person's hand does. He is actually giving a speech. He says, I am happy you all could come here today. The hand is giving a punch, paw. First, I would like to discuss the plans for our annual family picnic. Now, it's a severe one, whack. It will be held 2 weeks from today in the Sevenses meadow. Again, another slap. There will be games and dancing followed by a cookout, another punch. Hold it. Now, from the audience is being asked, why are you doing this? Now, the person says, sorry, I never know what to do with my hands while I am making a speech. I said much about this while talking about presentation skills, but let's give a quick thought. What should you do with your hands when you are delivering a speech? Because this is a major thing. Now, if you don't know what you should do, what you will do is indulging in all kinds of negative behavior, such as even gathering enmity with the audience by doing all sorts of things which are expressed in this cartoon. Now, the best thing that you should do is rest the palms if you are nervous. Okay, that means don't do anything with the palms, whether it's on the table, whether it's on the desk or on the podium, wherever you can put it. Even sometimes a chair may be there, just rest it, don't do anything. Now, if you are very confident, open the palms and move it, whatever you want to do, if you are confident. But avoid inserting them inside the pockets or keeping them on the back, or while talking just crossing the hands, or doing something like clasping or using the hands to play with the pen or the chalk piece, play with your watch, fondle your hair, play with the pen in the pocket, unbutton, rebutton your coat or shirt, and so on. Now, the best thing is, if you develop confidence and if you can actually correlate the verbal part of communication, that is, whatever you are saying verbally, if you are able to correlate your hand gestures with that, that goes very well in terms of effective communication. Because people listen what you say verbally, but get the message non-verbally. So, your gesture will help them to get it much more effectively than the verbal part. So, once you become a confident communicator, try to use the hands freely. Do not freeze them, release them. But at the same time, let the hands do not run riot and then do whatever the hands would like to do. No, but they are controlled and they are correlating your verbal thoughts. So, if you can do that, again you are creating a very effective professional image in terms of communication. Coming to the next important aspect of nonverbal communication, that is proxemics. This amounts to use of space, distance and proximity. Now, the distance or reducing the distance also would convey a very powerful nonverbal message. Look at examples. Look at the way we use space to communicate. The richer a person, the more important, the greater the space that the person occupies. Example, in train, in aircraft, you will find that the space is given to the people who can afford to give more, pay more. So, the first class ticket gives more space, more leg space, and then the second class, third class in train, you come to the unreserved and you see the crammed kind of situation in unreserved and then the space that's given in first AC. So, the difference is in terms of space. Same thing in bigger houses, houses which are near beaches, houses which are just on a single island owned by a billionaire. You go there either by a ship or by a helicopter. Now, such houses and houses in slum area where it is crammed, and houses where there are spaces for everything, there is living room, bedroom, so many bedrooms, study room, etc. And then there is a house where there is a single room and kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, everything, study room, living room is in the same one. Different corners are allocated for different things. Now, space, the way you use space actually indicates the kind of personality that you have, the kind of accessibility you have in terms of your richness, in terms of your power. Now, in terms of developing relationship, we also understand that familiarity would breed contempt. What does it mean? Now, suppose you try to show a kind of familiarity in terms of contacting somebody, meet somebody very often and then meet frequently. Initially, the person must have longed for your meeting, longed for looking at you. But in due course of time, what happens? That familiarity can develop as a kind of contempt. How often I am seeing this person? How often this person is occupying my space? So, that can lead that contempt. So, professionals, successful politicians, what they would do is they would get respect by creating more space. So, you will find again, if it is the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister, you will find the kind of space that's maintained when they are delivering a speech. So much space is created before the audience and the actual person. But if it is just a normal leader, a local teacher, you will find the less space that is created. So, the more space somebody is trying to create, the more respect the person is trying to wield over others. Now, the importance of space can also be seen in its degree of formality. Look at the situation. If it is a husband and wife, generally it is expected that if the husband is driving the car, the wife sits next to him on the front seat. Now, this also shows the degree of familiarity, the intimacy. Now, if in a situation the wife who always sits there in the front happens to sit on the back on that particular day, it can indicate that maybe there is a kind of miscommunication between these two. Okay. Then, as I said before, the bigger the leader, the larger the area sealed. The greater the leader, he or she gains more space, and the greater the honor when the person goes and then offers hand and shakes with the other person. The one among the audience, when this leader goes and shakes, feels elated because the person is maintaining touch by reducing the sealed space. Sitting on a park bench, look at this situation. Now, generally when we sit on a park bench or on a railway station platform, when we are sitting, if the seats are free, we leave so much space for strangers. But at the same time, if it is a friend, what we do is we reduce the space. And then when physical space is not available, what we do is we try to create psychological space, such as in overcrowded lift. What we do is we try to tighten our muscles and shrink ourselves. That's what we do. So we'll talk more about this very soon. When I talk to you about the extent of space that we use, I should also throw a bit of caution here and there. Now, when I tell you, for instance, the degree of formality or informality is shown by the increasing or reducing of space between us or among a group of people. And when I was giving you the example that in case of a husband-wife situation, when the husband is driving a car and the wife sits next to him, I said that this is absolutely a normal, ideal couple kind of situation, and there is no friction at all. Now, I also said that when the wife happens to sit on the back, it can indicate that there is more space in terms of miscommunication that must have generated between the two. Maybe there is a disagreement that they have between them recently. So, if the wife happens to sit normally on the front seat and if she is sitting on the back suddenly, this indicates that there is some kind of discrepancy in the relationship, a gap that's developing. If you just go by the spatial interpretation, if you just look at the proxemics. But I said that I should also throw a bit of caution, which I will also tell at the end repeatedly, is that do not just jump into conclusions. There are other physical factors sometimes which would also compel the person to go and sit back. Maybe, for instance, the wife has conceived and the doctor has told her not to sit on the front one and sit comfortably on the back one possibility. Maybe that there is too much sunlight during the time they are going, and then she wants to avoid it, or she is allergic to this, she is not comfortable to this, and then she wants to sit on the back. Now, the relationship is absolutely normal even now, but the person is avoiding sitting next to the husband just because of certain physiological or environmental factors. So, that's why I said I will throw a caution, word of caution, because when you form a conclusion, you should also consider the other factors that must have also compelled the person to change that difference in space. Now, the same thing with amount to the leader. I said that leader is also showing his or her importance, dominance by sealing as much as possible in terms of space. So, you will find that the biggest of the leader will be in bulletproof, surrounded by security guards, but so much space, so much of distance between the leader and the audience. Now, the moment the leader gets down from that stage where so much sealed space has been created and comes to the audience and accepts garland in an Indian context, or pats or shakes or gives a hug, the leader is reducing the space. Now, this creates the impression that the leader wants to be more intimate, more close to the people. Okay. Now, this is on the one hand, but look at other sealed situation, like in cities where the chief minister or prime minister or a very important personality happens to move, and because of security concerns, they seal a particular area and others are not allowed to go. Now, sometimes they seal it even 1 hour before or 2 hours before the actual person comes, and so much of traffic jam, traffic congestion. But despite that, this leader is still able to exercise power over this situation, because the leader's safety is considered to be superior even in terms of the country's safety. So, the leader is given this. But when I say these two situations where the space is sealed, sometimes in advance, and it is the leader who decides, even in this sealed space, when the leader is traveling, Suddenly the leader can get down and then shake hand with the person, the followers who are just waiting there to just get a passing glance. It's the leader who can decide. But conversely, it's not the follower, the subordinate who can decide. So this is another caution you should note, which means suppose it's your boss who is there, standing there, and so much distance is created between the boss, your superior, and then you are among the audience. Now if the boss decides to come down and shake hand with you or give a hug or pat you, you have enough reasons to feel elated, because the boss has not only reduced this, but the boss is also giving you a kind of recognition by reducing space between him and you on the one hand. But in your over excitement, even if the boss appears to be very friendly and informal, you cannot run from the crowd, the gathering among the audience, and then reduce the space on your own, and you cannot go and give handshake unless he offers to you. You cannot go and hug him unless he comes and does that to you. So mind this, it's always the one who is in power, is always the one who is superior, who decides whether to reduce that space or not. If you happen to be at a lower subordinate position, you have no control over reducing that, and if you try to do that, that's violation of their space and you will be penalized for that. So keep that in mind. So same thing goes with regard to sitting on a bench, that's especially on a railway platform. Now let's say the platform is completely free and then there is a stranger. So when you go and see that there is space, you will not go and sit next to the stranger. You will leave so much space between you and the stranger, and then you sit. Now the stranger also is quite comfortable when you leave that much space. Now the caution here is, now if your friend is sitting there and if you tend to leave so much space, the friend is likely to feel offended. Conversely, you will not even leave space. If it is friend, you will automatically go and sit close to the friend. The less space possible, the more friendly you are, the more intimate the relationship is. So you will obviously not do that. But again, conversely, if you try to give that space, create that space, it can again indicate that there is a kind of rift in the relationship. Now you don't want to sit as close as you used to do that before, because now there is a kind of misunderstanding in the relationship. So understand this caution that you should use when you are applying this non-verbal communication part in proxemics. Then, as I said, when physical space is not available, what do you do and what do people generally do? What they do is, they'll create psychological space. What does it mean? Even in crowded lift, what they will do, they will just tighten their muscles and then they will look up, they will not look straight. So they'll avoid touching, literally and figuratively shrinking oneself, but actually we are just at close intimate touch point, and in fact literally we will be touching the other person. Even some very private organs may be in close touch with us. Even then we will try to create our psychological space. So that physical touch we don't like, we don't mind, but we try to create psychological space. So that if you don't like, you can also do that. Now look at the situation in crowded cultures where people are just together in lift. Look at, they are not maintaining eye contact, they are not looking at each other, and then although their hand, shoulder, the major body parts are touching each other, they have already created their psychological space. Their mind is switched off, they are not focusing on the other person. Everybody is narrowed down, literally, figuratively, in his own thoughts. So that happens in a crowded culture, and you create your own private space. And what happens sometimes when the space is violated? Now, before we understand what happens when the space is violated, let's get a better view and understanding of territory as such, and the kind of interpersonal distance we maintain in terms of using territory. Now, territory is giving us a sense that that's our space. To put it in a simple manner, for instance, the kind of territory a person who walks occupies, and the kind of territory that a person who goes on cycle occupies, and the territory that is again used by somebody on car. Now, the person who walks has less territory compared to the one that who goes on four-wheeler, and compared to the one who goes on a small car, and compared to the one who goes on a truck. So much territorial space the truck driver thinks he owns. So that's why he gets violent when somebody uses the space before his truck, crosses quickly, or even comes near to his truck. So he thinks that he's apart from the truck area, there is some space he thinks that he's owning. Same thing with car. But the space reduces to the pedestrian, the space reduces to the cyclist. So the cyclist can be hit if he is coming close to the truck, because the truck driver feels that he is violating his territorial space. Now, how can we fix it? How can we understand this in a better manner? We can understand this by the way people who have done a lot of research on this territory have actually divided them. They have divided this into four aspects, four types. We can call them as types of interpersonal distance. So they talk about intimate, personal, social, and public space. Now let's look at this from the public space, which is the greatest one. Now in public space, depending on the power status of the leader, the space will be very far, it will be 25 feet or even greater, depending on the power one exercises to seal the space between him and the audience. Now even in that, there is a close level in which it is about 12 to 25 feet. But you can understand overall the public space, whether it is close or far, it's starting from 12 feet distance is still maintained. Now in case of social, where there is formal, informal interaction, but not that intimate as the inner circle level. So the social level, the far is determined by 7 to 12 feet, and the close level is 4 to 7 feet, where the person is close, shaking hand, hugging, patting and all that. So the distance reduces. Now when it comes to personal, the far is from 2.5 to 4.5 feet, and the close is 1.5 to 2.5 feet. So standing together, putting the hand on the shoulder of the other person, holding hand. But even without that, just maintaining closeness in sitting, for instance. But the most intimate and the intimate, so 6 to 18 inches is intimate, very close, or touching, sitting on the lap. If it is a small baby, just being carried, or sometimes the baby sits on the shoulder, carried on the back, carried by hands. So touching level is the intimate level, where both parties allow each other to let proxemics become zero. Okay. So intimate, personal, social, public. You can also visualize this in the form of a space circle. So at the outside you have the public space, so 12 to 25 feet, and then you have the next social level, which is about 4 feet or so, and then the next personal one up to 1.5 feet, and then the intimate one where it is touch, zero proxemics. So you can also visualize like this. What happens when you attack, when you invade my space? When you invade my space, I give some reactions and I clearly indicate that I am not happy with that. How is that done? I feel troubled. I express that I feel troubled when you attack my space, when you invade my space without my permission, without sometimes my knowledge, you just come and encroach on it. I may also become defensive. I will also try to put some defensive gestures. I can become aggressive. I am angry, I am wild. How dare you come and reach my space? And then I can retaliate. I can push you. I can kick you. I can hit. I can say something loud. I can do anything to send you back from my territorial space, which I think is my private space, and that's my right. And at the same time, generally what do people do other than doing that as an individual? What are the general reactions to an invasion of your space? One is people avoid conversation. When they don't like your invasion, people avoid conversation. Another thing is they avoid eye contact. So they will not look at you, they will look at a different object, different person, different people around them. Then they will also, interestingly, place some objects in between as a barrier. So like go back to the situation where you are on the bench of a railway platform, and then somebody is just coming and sitting close, especially let's say this is a girl and that's a boy. What the girl will do is immediately to put a bag in between or a file in between, just to indicate a kind of barrier to suggest that, look, I don't like your invasion. And at the same time, they will try to show that their attention is focused elsewhere. They don't try to look at the other person, they will show, maybe they will show that they are reading something or they are observing something, but they show to the other person they are least interested in this one whenever this space is invaded. Now think about these three aspects of nonverbal communication that I focused in this lecture, about space, about touch, and then overall I was trying to give you some caution about these aspects, and I started with the universal expressions with regard to space. Think about them, and then I will go for one more lecture in which I will try to conclude by talking more about chronemics, because we didn't have time to talk about that in this one. And after talking about chronemics, I will tell you how you can use this effectively and what are the do's and don'ts. So till that lecture, I just want you to go back to the previous ones, have a quick recapitulation of all the ones we have done so far, and get ready for the next and the final one, hopefully. Thank you so much and stay tuned till the next lecture. Wish you all the best.